Ukraine strikes inside Russia, a turning point in the conflict. Ukrainian forces have launched strikes against targets inside Russia. These attacks, using U.S.-supplied weapons, signal a new phase in the conflict. They have caused significant damage and raised fears of further escalation. Ukrainian officials argue that Ukraine has a right to defend itself against Russian aggression. The use of U.S. weapons inside Russia raises the stakes of the conflict. It risks drawing NATO into a direct confrontation with Russia. The situation underscores the need for a diplomatic solution. The U.S.-supplied weapons fueling Ukraine's counteroffensive. The recent strikes inside Russia were carried out using U.S.-supplied weapons. These weapons, including long-range rocket systems, were provided to Ukraine as part of billions of dollars in military aid. The Biden administration argues these weapons are defensive, helping Ukraine defend its territory from Russian aggression. However, their use inside Russia raises concerns about mission creep and a wider war. Critics warn of U.S. entanglement, but the administration defends its decision, citing Ukraine's right to self-defense. The provision of U.S. weapons remains contentious, with debates on its necessity and potential to prolong the conflict. Reactions from Moscow and Kiev, denial and justification. The strikes inside Russia have elicited sharp reactions from both Moscow and Kiev. Russia has condemned the attacks as terrorism and vowed to retaliate. It has accused the United States of being directly involved in the conflict. Russian officials have warned that the strikes could lead to a wider war between Russia and NATO. Ukraine has not officially taken responsibility for the strikes. However, Ukrainian officials have hinted at their involvement. They have justified the attacks as self-defense. Ukrainian officials argue that Russia has been waging a war of aggression against Ukraine for years. They say that Ukraine has a right to strike back. The differing narratives from Moscow and Kiev highlight the deep divisions that exist between the two sides. They also underscore the high stakes involved in the conflict. The use of U.S.-supplied weapons inside Russia has added a new layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. The international community is divided, a spectrum of responses. The international community is divided in its response to the recent escalation in Ukraine. Some countries have condemned Ukraine's use of U.S.-supplied weapons inside Russia. They urge both sides to exercise restraint and seek a diplomatic solution. Others have expressed support for Ukraine's right to defend itself. They argue that Russia bears responsibility for the conflict. The United States has reiterated its support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It has, however, stopped short of explicitly endorsing the strikes inside Russia. European countries are divided in their response. Some, like Germany, have expressed concern about the escalation. Others, like Poland, have voiced strong support for Ukraine. The divided international response reflects the complexities of the conflict. There is no easy solution to the crisis. The use of U.S.-supplied weapons inside Russia has further complicated the situation. Escalation or deterrence. The use of U.S.-supplied weapons inside Russia raises critical questions. Some analysts believe the strikes could deter Russia from further aggression. They argue that Russia will be more cautious in its military operations. Others fear the strikes could lead to a dangerous escalation. They argue that Russia may respond forcefully to provocation. The situation is complicated by the potential for conflict spillover. The international community must work together to prevent escalation. The future of the conflict towards negotiation or further escalation. The recent escalation in Ukraine has cast a shadow over the prospects for peace. The use of U.S.-supplied weapons inside Russia has made a negotiated settlement more difficult. It has also increased the risk of a wider war. Despite the challenges, diplomacy remains the only viable path to ending the conflict. The international community must continue to engage with both Russia and Ukraine. It must also work to address the underlying issues that led to the conflict. The future of Ukraine hangs in the balance. The choices made by Russia, Ukraine and the international community in the coming weeks and months will be critical. A peaceful resolution to the conflict is still possible. It will require all sides to prioritize dialogue and compromise over violence and confrontation.